Hey there, I'm Julie Tam, managing broker of LYN REALTY in Houston, and today we are talking about the lawsuits against the National Association of Realtors and how the outcome affects you, the consumer. This is Smarter Real Estate that you're watching weekly on Wednesdays, and I thank you for joining me. Today I am talking from my car once again in the neighborhood of Tanglewood, which is a lovely neighborhood in the heart of Houston with lovely homes. But I do want to say one thing is that I work in almost all price ranges, from about mid to low all the way up to the luxury price range. So I'm not exclusively a luxury realtor. Some people think I am, but I'm definitely not. So please come to me for all your real estate needs. All right, let's jump right into it. So you know, I am a former TV journalist. I was a news anchor and reporter on local stations as well as national networks. And so I'm all about accuracy and providing correct information with the right perspective, okay, which not everyone does. I was recently interviewed by the Houston Chronicle, which is our city's newspaper, about this very topic by the fabulous senior real estate reporter, Marissa Luck. Shout out to her. And so I had to become an expert on this topic, not only for that, but also because of my profession, right? This affects me and it affects my clients and customers. And so here today, I'm going to touch on the main things that came out of this class action antitrust lawsuit, actually multiple lawsuits against NAR and some other real estate brokerages that were dragged into it, because there's quite a bit there, but mainly the things that consumers have been asking me about, things that are top of mind, that are of the most interest is what I'm going to cover today, because there's too much to put into a video and I don't want to put you to sleep. Okay, so we're going to talk about how these things affect how the consumer, you as buyer, seller, tenant, or landlord, primarily focusing on the buyer seller aspect because the tenant landlord isn't so much mentioned, but some of the things apply there too, and how you deal with realtors, how you deal with the other side in a transaction, how information is being presented to you, and how this potentially could affect home prices. Okay, so first of all, compensation is one of the main things being talked about. You know, it's called commission. It's historically been called commission, what realtors make, but that's a little bit of a misnomer because there are some jobs where you earn a commission on top of your regular wages or your salary or your, hourly or, fixed salary. However, in real estate, for realtors who work commission-based, that they're not employed by a real estate brokerage. So the vast majority of realtors, we don't earn any sort of wage or salary. We are 100% commission. So really the more accurate term that is being used right now by all the realtor associations is compensation. This is our compensation. This is how we make a living. We have no other source of income other than through this, what is known as commission, okay? But some salespeople, they do make some sort of salary, some sort of base pay, and then on top of that, they earn commission to supplement their income based on their sales performance. So what does that mean? That means that if I don't close a deal, if I don't lease a property, the person actually signs that lease to move in, if I don't sell a property or help my buyer buy a property that actually closes at the title company, I make $0 for all of the work that I've done. Some of the work can take days, weeks, months, or even 1 or more years. That's a long time to work for a client and make nothing in the end if it doesn't close successfully. We can show dozens and dozens of homes, okay? I mean, a realtor could show 80 homes, 100 homes, or however many, and if ultimately the buyer doesn't buy a home, they make $0, okay? And so that's really important to note to start out with, just a definition. My fingers are already getting tired of holding this phone, so it's gonna be a little long video for my fingers anyway. All right, so the important thing to know is that commissions or compensation has always been negotiable, okay? A very typical percentage that people would see is kind of what people expected and thought that that was like the fixed percentage, but that's not true. We have seen higher and lower percentages, and this is negotiated by either side. So with the seller wanting to sell a home, hiring a realtor being a member of a realtor association, our local one being the Houston Association of Realtors, we have Texas Realtors, and then we have the National Association of Realtors. So each state and a lot of local cities, you would call them, have their own realtor associations, and some are grouped with multiple cities. Okay, so before, when a realtor would go on MLS to look up a listing, you would see the compensation being offered by the listing agent, because the listing agent is being paid by the seller. And so the seller is paying the listing agent, who is then splitting that compensation with the buyer's agent. If the buyer has an agent. If the buyer doesn't have an agent, then of course it's negotiable also between the seller and his agent, or his or her agent, what the percentage might be. Would his or her agent keep a smaller percentage of the buyer's side, because the agent would have to do extra work if the buyer is not represented by someone who can help them directly? Or would that listing agent just be able to keep the entire compensation that would have otherwise been split with the buyer's agent? So in this case, MLS would list out what that percentage was for each listing. And so buyer's agents could go on MLS in the past, basically before mid-August when all these changes went into effect, and the buyer's agent could see what they would expect to be compensated, plus any bonus. But now we are not allowed to put that information on the MLS. However, we can put it anywhere else in the world. It can be on another website. It can be on a billboard. It can be, obviously who would buy a billboard to put this, but it could be on a sign at the property, like on the for sale sign as a rider. It could be on social media, or it could just be that the buyer's agent contacts the listing agent by phone, email, text, or however, to ask directly. Okay. And so this compensation, what I have seen though, is that nothing has changed. And actually I've talked to other realtors. There's been other realtors interviewed for this Houston Chronicle article. I've talked to lenders, and the vast majority of contracts that are going into the title companies right now, the seller is paying the buyer's agent's commission. Because basically what this lawsuit did was make it to where, since the compensation is not being offered up right in the MLS, therefore there's no guarantee from the seller to pay a buyer's agent, then the buyer would potentially be on the hook to pay the agent themselves. Now, this raises a few questions. One is, okay, well then if the buyer doesn't want to bring money to closing, then what happens? Do I just not hire a buyer's agent? That could be an option. However, because of what we're seeing, sellers are wanting to pay those buyer's agents. Why? Because they want to sell their home. Some buyers, because they don't want to bring that money to closing, will literally tell their buyer's agent, I don't want to see a property if the seller isn't paying the buyer's agent commission or compensation, because I don't want to have to bring that to closing. It cannot be folded into the loan. And so if sellers don't want to miss out on those buyers, which buyers have the right to do that, they absolutely have the right to say, I don't want to see a property, don't even tell me about it if the seller isn't paying you, my agent, then the seller's going to lose out. So the smart seller, which is most sellers right now, are going to still choose to pay the buyer's agent for this very reason. The seller could also provide concessions to the buyer, just as some sort of credit at closing, so the buyer can use that for anything, to replace the carpet in the house after they buy the house or whatever. And then, so that's all on the table. And so what we're seeing though is that, and actually what I was quoted as saying is, it's kind of like a wash in a way. The seller, would budget into their home price the fact that they have to pay the compensation to the realtors. And so if the seller isn't going to be paying the buyer's agent compensation, they could potentially feasibly lower the home price a little bit to benefit the buyer, but that doesn't really benefit the buyer if they're still going to have to pay their own agent. So in the end, like I said, for the seller to attract the most buyers, they're going to want to pay the buyer's agent, because the buyer's agent is going to be told by the buyer not to show them homes where they're not getting paid otherwise. Okay. I think I've repeated that in 3 different ways or something. So hopefully that makes sense. And the other thing is, we've always had, like, we as, me as a realtor, and what we've told our agents and brokers in our company, LYN Realty, is to sign agreements with every transaction, because that way everything is formalized. You've got the liability, the coverage, you're covered by that document. I don't mean coverage like insurance. I just mean by that document, whatever it says, each side is protected, the client and the realtor. And so when a realtor is representing a buyer, they should sign a buyer-tenant representation agreement. The agreement covers both buyers and tenants. And I'm talking about Texas, okay? And so this is a document that's put out for our state. And other states probably have something similar, but I cannot speak about them. And so what we're having to do now is it's a requirement that buyers and buyers agents sign a buyer representation agreement before going out to look at their first home. So you can talk about it, and buyers can certainly interview multiple agents, but whichever agent's going to go show you homes, you have to sign that agreement with them. But now there's also another option, which is the short form version of this buyer rep agreement. And so if you don't want full representation by a buyer's agent to literally do everything with you and for you from beginning to end, and all you want is for someone to open doors for you, you can agree on some sort of fee, whether it be hourly or per property, or some other arrangement with your chosen realtor. The realtor may set a fee, and if you don't like it, you go find a different realtor that has a fee that suits you better. But just remember, in a lot of cases, you get what you pay for. You're not going to get Neiman Marcus service for Kmart prices. And so in the world of real estate, being that you're purchasing something very expensive, I would say that you really want the best representation you can get, not a discount representation. That's my opinion and the opinion of many others, because you are potentially going to cost yourself even more due to poor guidance and advice, and therefore poor decision making by yourself, because you don't have that good guidance and advice from a very experienced and highly qualified realtor. Okay, so yes, you could pay to just have the realtor open doors for you until maybe at some point you realize, I really want the hand holding all the way to the end, so I want to go ahead and sign on for full services with this realtor, and then the realtor would be receiving the compensation either from the seller or from the buyer, depending on which property the buyer ends up buying, and if that seller agrees to pay the compensation for the buyer. So yes, the big question is, how will this affect home prices? And what we are seeing, obviously, is that it's not affecting it a whole lot yet. Obviously, we've only been, with this new situation and these new procedures for about a month by the time I'm shooting this video and publishing this video. But what we're hearing from a lot of real estate professionals is that probably it won't have too much effect, at least in the current market, on home prices. And so a lot of people are still going to be doing things about the same as they did before, just because that's what consumers expect. And so sellers who want to sell their homes are going to want buyers to come buy their homes and not scare off buyers by trying to force buyers to pay the compensation of the buyer's agent. Not force, because no one can force anyone to do anything, but the point is that the buyers will feel locked into paying if the seller doesn't pay. Okay, so those are kind of the main things. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to comment down below on YouTube or Facebook or on LinkedIn, and or you can send me a message. Now realize I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just speaking from a realtor's point of view, what we have learned. I've taken an online course about this through our local realtor association and read a zillion emails from HAR, TXR, NAR, and articles and everything, just to make sure that I'm really well versed in all of these things. Coming out of this are also a lot of changes to forms and other details, but these are the main things that the consumer will see and feel, and and that's that. So all right, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me again on another weekly Wednesday episode of Smarter Real Estate, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye.